Hello there. Welcome to the Recovery Journey YouTube channel. And welcome to episode 2. I'm Coach Chris, and I'm going to be talking to you about the details of the 3 types of substance users that I mentioned in the episode 1. So, as I've mentioned before, I've been working with people with addiction and drug and alcohol problems for many years, and I've had quite a number of clients over those years who had different ways of explaining what their problem was. And it kind of breaks down into the 3 that I mentioned to you in episode 1. You got the person who admits that they are an alcoholic or a drug addict. They just come right out and say it. Hey man, I've been doing this for years and I'm ready to stop. I fully admit that I'm alcoholic, addict. Maybe they've been to treatment before, whatever. They've made a determination. The second person says, I don't believe I'm an alcoholic or an addict, but I do drink heavily or use heavily sometimes. And when I get started, I usually can't stop or don't realize how much I'm drinking until maybe the next day. And I wake up or come to and people tell me that I did things that I don't even remember that happening. Or the third that I mentioned in episode 1, which was I just don't drink that often and I don't use drugs that often, but every once in a while I go on what I'll call a binge. And, it may only be every other month or every few months. But when I do go on this binge, things get totally out of control and my life begins to fall apart and a lot of bad stuff happens. So those are the 3. So what I'd like to concentrate the rest of our time together in this episode on is I'm going to back up and go backwards on the list, and I'm going to go to the third description, which is the person who considers themselves to just be a binge drinker or a binge user, a recreational user. So here's an interesting fact that those of you who don't feel like that describes you, think back, and this is true for me and for a lot of other people that I know. The fact is that most real alcoholics and real addicts started off with a story about being a binge drinker or user or weekend warrior or partier. And what it really marks for a lot of our histories is the beginning of a decline in the quality of life. I started out as what anyone could describe as a binge drinker and a binge partier. I was 15, 16 years old and cut grass for pocket change, and it would take me a couple of weeks to save up enough money to go out with my buddy that lived next door and buy some beer and some cigarettes and some gas for his old Camaro, and we would go out on Friday night and we'd drink a lot of beer and get just really drunk. And a few times nothing bad happened, but most of the time there were some negative consequences. And that is the kind of a definition of a binge drinker. Bad things happen when I drink, but I don't do it that often. So think about that as a kind of a guideline or an outline of a binge drinker, and decide if that's you now or if you can remember that kind of circumstance in your life in the past. If you think your drinking and using is a little more serious than just a binge drinker, try to decide whether or not you went through that phase yourself.